are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS students. This episode is all about IELTS exam preparation. And this is extremely important because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay, that's a useful idiomatic expression that I would really consider that you learn. I'd really consider learning that because you can use it in the speaking, you can use it in the writing, and most of all, you can start incorporating it into your IELTS preparation. So that's basically if you fail to plan, you can plan to fail. All right. So let's get straight into it. Now, if you are preparing for the IELTS exam, you want to know, or you want to make the best use of your time. So you need to find out when is the best time for you. Okay. Do you study best in the mornings, or are you more of an afternoon person? Some students work best at 3 a.m. in the morning. This is perfectly normal. Okay, well, not perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable. I have friends that do the best work in the evenings from like 11 p.m. till about 2 a.m. Maybe it's because of the lack of distractions. Maybe it's their own natural rhythm. Either way, it doesn't really matter. What you need to do is find out when your best time is. Okay? And then once you've found out when your best time is, you need to give yourself the best opportunity. And that would mean minimizing the distractions. So you might want to put your headphones on and listen to something that's called white noise, like the sound of rain or the sound of train lines. Or you might want to just listen to some classical music or something like that, or put your phone in flight mode, turn off the notifications, and then just dedicate a 30-minute break to working. Okay? Also, this probably goes without saying, but like I said, to give yourself the best opportunity, it means like eating clean, eating good food, avoiding alcohol, all of this stuff. When I eat, for example, a big bag of sweets, I find it so difficult to concentrate. So you want to be drinking lots of water, eating healthily, and this just all goes into giving yourself the best opportunity. Okay, it's not going to boost your score by 50%, that's obvious. However, these are just stacking the deck, just little things that you can do, and the more of these little things you do, the better the probability of passing, the better are your chances of passing. So, step one, we find the best time and we make it the optimum time by minimizing distractions and basically just making the most of it by eating healthily and all the rest of it, doing some sport. So once we've found out the best time, what you want to do is organize that time, because if you're like most people, you might be limited. You might only have 2 hours a day to do IELTS prep. So the best way to do this is to first do lots of practiced exams, okay, and then identify where you're losing the points. So it might be yes, no, not given in the reading, for example, or you might find that speaking is the biggest issue. In this case, what you need to do is just basically identify it. Okay, then you make a schedule and you just put the time, the date, and the task. Okay, and you might only want to do it for 3 days in advance at first. Start with small steps, but don't just put November the 6th, task IELTS. No, you need to be specific. Okay. And this way, you're going to get the most out of your time. Because if you just sit down and you've got on your notes, IELTS, it's going to be really difficult. Whereas if you just sit down at the allocated time, you prepare your environment, and then it says, IELTS, task 2, thinking of ideas. It's going to be a million times easier. So the basic emphasis here, the basic idea is to just organize this time that you have allocated. Okay, this way you're going to make the most of it. Also, you've got your list of tasks, but you're going to do, or you know what you're going to do from doing the exams, practice exams. Now, don't just list the tasks in alphabetical order, prioritize them. Okay, if you know you've got a serious issue with articles in grammar, for example, which is really common, then what you want to do is just put that on your task. That needs to be your number one task, and you might decide to dedicate 8 hours and then do a test and just review and measure your progress. Yeah, so imagine you've had your essays corrected, and you might want to go to IELTSwritingtask.net, get your essay corrected, get some feedback, and you might realize that you've got some issues with articles. Okay, so you start reviewing the articles, you start reviewing the theory, and then you do an online test, and then you want to do some more theory and you do another online test, but each time you monitor your results. Okay, and this way you can tell if you're improving. And by the way, if you do have something like articles or syntax rules, then I'd really recommend you focus on that until you get that sorted, and then move on to your next task. Okay, this is why having like 2 or 3 months to prepare is the ideal situation. But of course, it's the ideal, it's not the most common. Most people maybe have a month or 10 days to prepare, and in that case, then I think the best way would be to just focus on essay structure. For example, that's probably the fastest and easiest way to get a boost. But anyway, I digress. Sorry. Now then, so we've got the ideal time, we've minimized distractions, we've optimized the diet, and we know when we're working best and where we're working best. Now it's time, and also, we've got a schedule and we've got a task list, and we've allocated tasks to dates and times, so we're all set to go. So this is where the expression plan your work and work your plan comes in. Now we've planned all our work, it's time to work it. It's time to actually put it into action. So, once again, we're going to go to the most productive area. It might be a coffee shop in the shopping centre, or it might be a library, or it might be a co-working place. It doesn't really matter, just whatever works for you. Recently, by the way, I've been just jumping on the metro, jumping on the subway, and riding up and down all the length of the metro, just reading my book. And that's been really, really helpful for me, because I get so scatty. I get distracted incredibly easy. But I just put my headphones on and just sit there, read the book, and that works an absolute treat for me. Okay, but like I said, everybody's different, and you need to find out what works for you. So, next thing, execution. This is what I just said. Plan your work and work your plan. So you will find a good place. Now, if we've got the list of stuff we want to do, of the tasks, of certain areas that we want to get through, the best way, okay, for example, we've already put it into the most serious, and maybe we've got 3 extremely serious issues we want to get through. The best way to do this is to use a theory called Eat That Frog. I think this comes from Brian Tracy, I can't remember. But Eat That Frog, all it means is that you do the worst and the most horrible task you have on your list. You do that first, because the idea is, once you've completed that horrible task, all the tasks afterwards are going to be relatively easy. And this works well with a cold shower in the morning, by the way. It just makes it a lot easier. So Eat That Frog. So let's look at this. Maybe you absolutely detest and abhor writing essays and just copying out essays or using the look, cover, write technique. Okay, maybe you just really get down in the dumps, when you come even to think about this. So this would be the first task you put on your list and the first task that you do for your IELTS study session. Okay? It's that simple, and trust me, this works. After this, everything becomes much, much easier. So that would be the first one. Then the second one would be the Pomodoro technique, which I mentioned a few episodes back. This has been really productive for me, for my work. And it just breaks down the task into smaller tasks and just helps you to keep your productivity up. So I'd really recommend that. Now, the other thing that you want to do while you're preparing for your IELTS exam is to write everything down. Okay? So if you hear a good tip for the speaking, then you want to write it down, put pen to paper. And even in this episode, if you hear something useful, put it down on paper or on your phone. Ideally, pen and paper works better, for me anyway, and I think for a lot of other people. But write it down, okay? IELTS tips, IELTS notes, especially if you know that, or if at least you think it would work for you, yeah? So write it down. This way it's committed. It's not only more likely to be committed to your personal memory, it's more likely, or practically guaranteed, if you do review your notes, but you'll have something there in front of you to go to use when you're having problems. Okay, so let me think of an example. I was just talking with a student, and we were talking about giving answers for the speaking, and that you can immediately expand your answers and give yourself material to talk about if you give an example. So if the question is a follow-on question for part 3, and the examiner says, why do you think reading is important for children? And then you just say, well, reading is important for children because it expands their vocabulary, helps them learn about new cultures and new ideas and new opinions. For example, my cousin is 5 years old, and she's just starting to read Peppa Pig books, and she's loving it, and I can really see her imagination growing considerably, largely thanks to these books. So that's why reading is probably a good idea for children. You see? So that's a long way to give you an example, but what I wanted to say was, what you can do is now write down speaking tip, give examples with answers. And if you want to take it even further, you say give examples of people you know with your answers. Okay? So this is just a tip out of many. And if you're having problems collecting and using your tips, you can just go to sentenceguide.com. There's a speaking confidence course there. It comes with the writing course. And it's just got lots of tips like that'll help you. All right? So the other thing, we're not only going to write everything down, we're going to use Pomodoro technique, where you work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, get back, do 25 more minutes, and so on. You break up your 3 hours that way, do 6 sessions. That's really useful. Now, the other tip that I want to give you when you're doing your tasks is to don't bite off more than you can chew. Okay, so this is another useful expression. So imagine you're having your Christmas dinner or whatever dinner you might have in your festivities, in your holiday season, and you take a massive bite. Now it's going to take you, 5 minutes to chew this. So what I'm saying is that don't say, in this Pomodoro session or in this IELTS session, I'm going to master IELTS reading. Don't do that. So say, I'm going to study yes, no, not given answers. Okay? And just by breaking it down into smaller chunks and mastering those chunks. Okay? And then I think probably the most, this is the penultimate tip that I want to give you, but what's really important, and I said it before, is that find out what works for you. And if you've got no idea what works for you, it's because you haven't been doing any work. Quite simply. All right? I don't want to be rude, but if you've got no idea, then you really need to start working, start doing more stuff. And if you find that, okay, I've been in this coffee shop for 2 hours and I've got nothing done, well, then working in a coffee shop doesn't work. Whereas if you go to the library on a Sunday morning and you're just absolutely steaming away, then just write it down. Okay, library, Sunday morning, 9 a.m., 11 a.m., amazing work session. Okay? And then you want to start using that session and planning for that session next week. Or even better, try working Monday 9 till 11 on your IELTS prep if you know that time's good for you. Okay? And this goes back to, again, what I was saying before about the diet. You know, I find that if I have a strong coffee in the morning and I do some sport in the morning, then between like 9 o'clock and 12, I'm just an absolute machine and I can just do so much more work. Whereas around 2 o'clock, I want to go to sleep and I want to have a snooze and I want to go onto YouTube and watch cat videos, for example. Okay? So I know that I'm not going to schedule any work for 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but I know this because I've been doing this for a while and I've been monitoring and I've become aware of when I need to push myself, or when I don't need to push myself, and what time's good to allocate for work. Okay? So basically find out what works for you. Then, last tip I want to give you, the last bit of advice, is power lists. Okay? You know, your power list, well, you can call it a power list. I usually call it an error list. And that's more related to your essay writing. But you can use this for other areas of the exam. And it's just like your list. You don't take it into the exam. You try and memorize it. But if you know that you're losing points on articles, again, then you're going to check your essay for articles and for correct usage once you've finished writing it. But for example, also imagine that in the speaking, you always forget to give answers. You always forget to give examples of your answers. Well, in this case, on your power list, you're going to put in capital letters, give examples of a person I know for the speaking. Okay? That's what you're going to do on your power list. On the reading, for example, for your reading notes, you might say, attempt every question regardless of knowledge behind it, okay? Because you don't lose any points for incorrect answers. So you might as well just give it a shot, all right? So that's roughly, and I'll just give you a quick summary, okay? So if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay? That's the expression that I wanted to mention before. And this basically goes back to, first of all, we're going to recognize and identify where is the best time to work and when is the best time to work for ourselves personally. We're going to give ourselves the best opportunity. No distractions, no alcohol, no rubbish food. And we're going to make the most of this time. Then we're going to organize it. We're going to make a list of scheduled time, allocated time for this preparation, and then the task. And we're going to be specific in that task. And we're going to prioritize the tasks as well. Okay? Then, once we do start working, we're going to use some different techniques. Like one, doing the worst technique first. Hopefully that's the priority one. Okay? The one we hate. There's probably a good correlation there that if we hate it and it's the most important, if it's the most important and we hate it, definitely get it out of the way first. Then we're going to break our time up. We're going to write everything down. We're not going to overestimate. And then we're just, like I said a million times before, find what works for you and find it through experimentation because everybody's different. Okay. That's all for this podcast. Hopefully you were writing things down. Hopefully you've already modified your error list or your power list, whatever you want to call it. And if you still want some help, if you still want some guidance, you can check out sentenceguide.com. That's my online course, or you can get your essays corrected at IELTSwritingtask.net. That's my essay correction site as well. or you can just go to IELTS Podcast, check out the new theme, the new website, have a look, have a browse around, and email me suggestions or email me for help. Okay? Have a great day and good luck for your IELTS prep. All the best.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.